talk of a political dirt unit.
It's typical of this job.
And we're off.
Boom.
Evening, Daniel.
Good evening, Brendan.
Hello, Raul.
Yes. May I introduce our newest cast member?
This is Raul. Because
Look at
our current producer here is too lazy. So
He's getting a bit long in the tooth.
Yeah, we're training up Raul. Aren't you?
Yes.
He's asleep again.
Gorgeous.
He'll be joining us. He'll be joining us along today.
Well,
Does
look, yeah, we
Raul
need
is
all the
Raul
allies we
up
can
to
get.
speed with what's going on in the rest of the world?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to explain the follies of our species. He's not that interested, to be honest.
Oh, don't blame
He'd
him.
rather just sort of run around and wrestle and stuff. But
Yeah.
he's got a good soul, so I'm sure he cares.
Yeah, well, I don't blame him at all.
Exactly.
It's been a while since we sat down, hasn't it?
A couple of weeks, yeah. There's been a lot happening. Yeah. You know what I've done?
There's a lot happening.
I've gone back and I've listened to old episodes of this podcast called The Dirt Unit.
Oh yeah, what's that like?
Yes. Well, it turns out that they called a hell of a lot of stuff. In particular, I mean the Iranian episodes, of course, leading into to the Eschaton and immanentizing all that sort of business. But also more recently, well, they sort of led on from each other, but the Epstein episodes. May I say, sir, that was just incredible coverage, because that came out, like, you did those before we had all of the files.
Yeah, way before. Well, not way before, but yeah, months before.
You called it pretty much 100%. Like, everything in that is just, it holds up incredibly well. I encourage anyone to go back and listen to it again, because yeah, it's not just the names in the files; it's the overall bigger themes, which I think are really important. And yeah, a lot of people seem to be missing that bigger picture. But you got the bigger picture even like before we had all of the granular detail. Well, and it's just incredible.
What I noticed, what I noticed then, and what has become way more obvious now, is like people don't look for themselves. Like they're like all the information was out there, obviously.
That's a good point.
But people just run on sound bites and create this picture of what something is based on like things
Twitter
other
post.
people have said. Yeah.
No, exactly right.
Because if you go in ignoring everything that everyone said and just try and look at as much source material as you can find, that's what you come up with.
Yeah. So I was sort of reluctant to dive too far into it because it was just all a bit too intimidating for me back then. Anyway, like there was just too much information. I didn't know where to begin,
I know.
But now, since the files have been released, I've obviously been diving, incredibly deep, and I think I've got a pretty good understanding of what the fucking files are. And yeah, it's just the perfect continuation of everything.
For the record, you've been digging through those files.
Yeah. Well, I mean, someone's got to, because as you say, people just rely on other people to give them sound bites and stuff. Yeah. And that's not a good epistemology. That's not a good way. To the point where, like,
you've got people, like official people, like people who claim to be like news anchors, like Breaking Points, for example, or like the Young Turks. These kind of people who like position themselves as like, they're like internet shows, but they're
legitimate news
proper
people,
news outlets. And they're just like, mentioning as a side note, like throwing in references to like pizza and stuff like that, and it's like
okay, yes. So can we just be absolutely clear about that, just for everyone listening? Pizza is pizza, and jerky is jerky, and grape soda is grape soda. These things are not code words. They are literally just talking about pizza and grape soda. It's like a weird little combination that you get from some little, street corners in New York City when you're there. It's like, oh, here's this bang, bang. It's like a combination. Jerky, yeah. He went on a jerky kick in about 2011. He had his chef prepare it in a very particular way. It's a whole thing, all right? It's just jerky. That's it. They are doing horrific shit, and we need to be talking about the horrific shit that they're doing. Exactly. And what you're doing by talking about the jerky and the pizza is not talking about that shit. You are literally covering up for the actual crimes that they committed by talking about bullshit instead. So stop it, please, immediately.
And if you want to like work off code words and find hidden meaning in things, I mean, he has a code word for that exact shit. It's called massage. We've known it for fucking ages.
Massage.
Like,
Because that's the bulk of what it was. Like, it's not even really much of a code word. It's just, massages that probably got, too sexual at the end. You know what I mean? Like, yes, a lot of it was just massage, and then it would take it too far, and then Ghislaine would come in for a fucking rapey threesome, and that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about. That's the sexual assault. And then, sorry, there is obviously more as well, but that's the surface level.
And also,
they're not eating babies. They're not eating babies.
No, absolutely not eating babies.
Just relax. But if they are, there's no evidence of it in the file.
Exactly.
They may have been eating babies, and if they did, they used a separate email address for that. We haven't seen that in any of the emails that we've seen.
JEE baby eating at gmail.com, probably.
Yes. So I know that most of our listeners probably know that already, but I think it's really important, and we need to push back on that whenever we see it in the public space. And I've been trying, and it hasn't really worked.
It goes nowhere.
But because I'm not going to let us get fucking Pizzagated again in real time, and that's what's happening. We are being Pizzagated.
No, and it's like it's also validating Pizzagate.
They're taking a victory lap. Oh, instead of realizing, holy shit, we got tricked by the actual billionaire pedophiles. Yeah. They are saying, "Oh, we knew this a long time ago." No, you voted for these cunts.
That's the thing. That's what is my biggest. The thing I hate seeing the most on the internet is fucking conspiracy theorists just keep getting proved right.
We were awake. We were awake in 2016.
Like, you've been wrong about fucking everything. You're not only wrong about everything. You're like actively, unknowingly covering up for fucking real shit.
Yes,
like in every single fucking way.
The worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst. It is like literally the worst.
Yes. It's the fucking worst.
So anyway, thank you for
probably the second worst, because what I've written for tonight is probably worse. So it's the second worst.
Well, I'm interested to hear this then.
So I mean, you mentioned that
the Iranian thing.
We said 9 months ago we put out an episode on the ideological underpinnings of the US, Israel, Iran relationship.
Yeah, all of it, the whole history, the theology, the bibliology.
Yeah, we did a lot. We did the temple, the whole history, the whole entire history
really
of the temple. And,
yes.
but most, relevant to right now, we did the Immanentizing the Eschaton, where we looked at the eschatologies on all different sides. So the premise was that, behind the everyday diplomacy, there's a three-way apocalyptic fucking suicide pact going on. And we laid out the three engines driving this machine. Like the Israel religious Zionist movement, the red heifers from Texas being raised in Shiloh, preparing the ashes to clear the Temple Mount and force the construction of the third temple, which they have, a fucking visitors center set up in Jerusalem with a model of it, and it's all ready to fucking go.
Based on a book that some guy wrote when he was tripping balls in a cave in the Mediterranean 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. Well, no, the Israel religious Zionist one was not based on. It's based on Ezekiel, I think 38 from memory. Sorry, I don't know what it says, but I think it's Ezekiel
on a
38.
Book that some guy wrote when he was tripping balls in a cave, and also based on some book from some guy who was tripping balls on 1,000 years before that.
On a mountain in
500
on a mountain in Sinai. And then we looked at the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the 12 Shia Islam eschatology. They're actively trying to make the world miserable and chaotic enough to summon the Mahdi from a millennium of hiding. And we looked at the Christian Zionist movement and lobby, centered on the Council for National Policy, cheering on everything going on in the Middle East and funding the settlements in Israel, funding Israel to the tune of billions of dollars a year in order to trigger the rapture and bring on the second coming of Jesus.
That is the third. I was going to try and say that's kind of included in the first, but it actually is a separate thing. You're right.
Well, they're all included in each other. And
I know, but
that's what we're going to zero in on tonight. So, based on all this stuff, we concluded that the ceasefire brokered in June or July, whenever it was would just be a temporary pause. The provocations will continue until Israel has the excuse to preemptively strike, and that the United States bled dry by a lot of its munitions in Ukraine, would be dragged into a second, more dangerous front.
Mhm.
We said the IRGC will close the Strait of Hormuz with mines, which Trump was apparently baffled about. We said that Iran is 2 weeks away from a nuke, always, and has been for the last 30 years. And so fast forward to February 2026, and the Israel and the US launch Operation Epic Fury, which, how the fuck do you name this operation the same initials as the Epstein files? What the fuck?
That's maddening. And Fury, what do you like? Fury
it's like they have gone, all right, we need to have this start with E and F. Pete Hegseth, what's it going to be?
Epic Fury. Epic? What are you? You're fucking a teenager on the internet in 2011?
Yeah.
What is this? Fury? What is, if that's how you want to define this?
So they launched 900 strikes in the first 12 hours. The sky over Tehran catches fire. Acid rain starts pouring over the city from their refineries being up in smoke. The Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, is taken out in his house, along with the wife, brother, and daughter of the guy who then became the Ayatollah, who actually hasn't been seen in public since. The Strait of Hormuz has been choked. Global shipping's flatlined. Fuel is fucking super expensive. And it's chaos. But we were right. I'd asked for a medal, but I'm pretty sure the global supply chain's currently held up in the Gulf.
Yeah. You were right, to be clear. I didn't really say anything. I was just listening. You were the one who made the fucking call. I was just along for the ride. But yes.
But in hindsight, I left some gaps that I can't not fill. After I finished, I was like, oh, there's actually I've got some more questions here, and there's a few things we didn't do. I was so focused on the individual eschatologies that we didn't actually combine them together and see exactly what it all looks like in a sequence.
Okay.
And when you take a step back and look at them together, that then opens the door to more questions. So tonight, we're filling in the gaps.
Great.
Because before we can even try and understand what's going on currently through this lens, we need to be clear on what outcome each one expects in what sequence and what it all says together. And then next time, which hopefully won't be as long as between this one and the next one, because time is of the essence at the moment. There's too much shit going on every day to try and even fucking catch up on up-to-date information on fucking everything. But maybe once we look at this, we answer a few questions. We'll have a look at some sort of anomalous stuff that I noticed leading into this war. And well, we'll figure it. We'll leave that for next time. But
see how we go.
Before we dive in, I just want to make it clear, because so there's this guy. There's this. Have you ever come across Professor Jang on YouTube at any point?
Chinese-looking fellow with a whiteboard.
Yeah. I mean, he's the only other guy I've ever come across that's that's actually laying this stuff out. And good on him. But something happened. He got invited on a bunch of really popular newsy type podcasts or YouTube channels and stuff. And there's just been this fucking campaign out to get him, calling him a fraud. Some people calling him a spy. And I've watched a lot of his clips over the last 6 months, and I don't really agree with a lot of other stuff he has to say. And some of the stuff I hear him say when he's talking about things that I'm familiar with, I know it's just he's got it wrong.
Yeah, I haven't invested too much time into it, to be honest. I sort of saw it and I go, okay, whatever.
Well, thanks to him, your academic types with YouTube channels have all been trying to come out and debunk him and whatever. And so I've heard the pushback against this idea of these sort of eschatologies being a driving factor in the conflict. And it's good to hear that, but I mean, none of it holds up. None of these academics whose main gripe is that he's not actually a professor; he's a teacher, and they're academics themselves. So
Stolen valor.
Yeah, pretty much. Like that's pretty much it. And then they'll just like sort of cherry pick things, or some stuff's like taken wildly out of context and not even what he was fucking saying. But I thought I want to make clear beforehand there is obviously diplomacy and geopolitics going on here, but
well, there was.
I'm not going to mention any of that in this one. So I wanted to make it clear that, like, yes, I'm not saying that this is the be all and end all, but I am saying that this is actually a way bigger factor than anyone wants to give it credit. It is a well-funded, influential thing that has been working towards this goal for a long time. And I do think some of the leaders are true believers. But I think for the most part, you know, the heads or the people who are calling the shots, you know, you're using this to manufacture consent for profiting off a rebuild of fucking war and whatever, you know. But with that out of the way, let's dive in.
All right. Yes, please. Thank you.
The cradle of civilization, the land of the prophets, the fertile crescent, the cultural crossroads, the gateway to the east, the home of the ancient wonders. These phrases have all commonly been used to describe the Middle East. But if three relatively small groups of powerful religious fanatics all get their way, if there are survivors, they will know it as the greatest, most tragic, cosmic joke in human history. It's an eschatological Ponzi scheme, a three-way Mexican standoff where every faction thinks they're the main character and that the other two are just sacrificial extras written into their script. So to recap, let's just quickly recap of what the three different roadmaps to the end times are. First, we have the Zionist map. To the religious Zionists, currently steering policy, they hold the balance of power in Israel. It's a linear process. They sacrifice the red heifer, they mix the ashes, they clear the Al-Aqsa Mosque off the Temple Mound, they lay the cornerstone. Once the temple's operational, the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, arrives, neutralizes Israel's enemies, and establishes universal peace under Jewish law. That's their finishing line. And they're not shy about using American money and US military hardware and the military itself to pave the road to get there.
It's very nice of you to lay it out so clearly and simply.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it doesn't make it any less absolutely ridiculous.
That's why I did up these maps. It's very straightforward, can't you see?
My outrage in the previous episodes was entirely justified.
Secondly,
yep, good. Okay. Secondly,
we have the Christian or the premillennial dispensationalist roadmap.
Premillennial dispensationalists.
Yes, it's much easier to just call them Christian Zionists. The Christian Zionists have spent decades and billions of dollars funding Map 1. They birthed the red heifers. They fund the settlement expansion projects, and they cheer where the bombs drop on Tehran.
It's just a book. It's just a book.
Yes.
Someone wrote 2,000 years ago.
Not even. They also donate to the building of the temple because the Jews are chosen by God. They're the chosen people of Yahweh. Abraham gave Yahweh his kid's foreskin and ensured that he has a constant supply of foreskin for over 2,000 years now. So they should just get heaps of cash and guns and stuff, right? No. According to their theological roadmap, that charismatic Jewish leader sitting on the newly built third temple isn't a savior. He's the literal Antichrist. He's the abomination of desolation.
Who, Christ?
No, the Jewish Messiah.
Who's
so the Christian Zionists need the Jews to build the temple so the Antichrist can defile it. Because as soon as he defiles it, the tribulation begins and the sky cracks open.
Do we have an Antichrist?
Huh?
Do we have an Antichrist?
I should have had my rabbi on standby for this one.
I'm kind of being silly, but that does also matter, though. Like, it does. I think that's an important detail. We're not talking about someone who materializes out of the clouds. We're talking about someone who does come through a or it could be cesarean, but through a human mother at least.
Yeah, there is a guy. There's a guy.
Oh, of course there is.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Okay, continue.
I haven't put it in here, but I do remember coming across that at some point. There is actually a guy who is said to be the Messiah, who is alive now.
The Messiah.
Yeah, the Messiah. So once the Antichrist or the Messiah is in the temple, he will defile it, and then the tribulation begins. The sky cracks open. The real Jesus comes down, and he slaughters the Antichrist armies at Megiddo, also known as Armageddon, and establishes his 1,000-year reign. So the part they don't say out loud is that according to their script, Zechariah chapter 13, when Jesus returns, 2/3 of the Jews will be slaughtered in the crossfire, and the surviving 1/3 will be forced to convert to Christianity. So to Christian Zionists, Yahweh's chosen people are the construction crew, the very disposable construction crew for the apocalypse. But then we have...
Yes, I don't like this.
The 12ers, the 12er Shia. Yes, so they believe, they're the 12ers because they believe that the 12th Imam has been in hiding for 1,000 years and he will come back. So when the Christian and Jews go ahead with the temple and the Antichrist reigns supreme, but their endgame begins. So the regional chaos and then the emergence of the ruler in Jerusalem, who they call the Dajjal, which is the Islamic Antichrist, is the signal they've been waiting for. And there's a beacon that summons Mahdi from a millennium, of occultation. But the Mahdi doesn't arrive alone. He brings Jesus with him. Jesus descends with the Mahdi. He returns as a devout Muslim. He prays behind the Mahdi. He breaks the cross. He kills the swine. And he abolishes the jizya tax. Which...
The what?
The jizya tax. So, well, if you think back to our temple episode, the jizya tax was what was charged to Christians and Jews after the, what's his name, that first, the first Muslim guy who conquered Jerusalem.
Muhammad.
No. The first crusader, Muslim crusader.
Oh,
Solomon or something? Suleiman?
Yeah, Suleiman or something like that.
Yeah. So he enforced the jizya tax, which meant that like Jews and Christians could live in Jerusalem, but they had to pay this tax for everything. And so by Jesus abolishing the jizya tax, that means like no one but Muslims are allowed in Jerusalem anymore. And he reveals to the world, Jesus reveals to the world that he was a prophet of Allah all along and dismantles Christianity and forces the surviving population to convert to Islam.
It's the same shit, my dudes. It's all the same shit.
Well, yeah.
Allah,
so it's
Jesus
like,
was a prophet of Allah. That's fine.
It's all the same shit, but it has a sequence. The Jews get their same shit first, and then theirs stops. Then the Christians,
but I mean like Jesus
take over.
being a prophet. You know,
the Christians basically take over, slaughter the Jews, and then their king's there. But when their king comes down, as they expect, he actually comes with the Mahdi and tells them that he's a prophet of Allah, and everyone has to convert to Islam. So they're all intersecting. They all need each other to happen, but they don't all finish at the same time. The Jews use the Christians for money and geopolitical cover to get it done. The Christians then use the Jews as bait to summon Jesus, and then the Muslims then use Jesus to destroy the Christians and the Jews. And this is why diplomacy in the Middle East is a fucking illusion. So the trigger point, it seems, is the temple. And how's that going to happen? Well, I guess probably the first thing they'd need to do is make sure that Iran has no nuclear capacity. I guess that might factor in to what's going on at the moment.
I thought we took care of that last year. Pretty sure I remember him. It was completely obliterated, was it not?
I know. And then magically, they're just like straight back to 2 weeks from a bomb.
We need to obliterate it again.
On that note, so let's just be really clear about that. So we made it perfectly clear last time, and I mentioned it before, that like Iran is always 2 weeks away from a bomb. They have been for like 30 years. It's called threshold, like that's the threshold nuclear threat breakout. I think it's called the breakout time. And that's like how long it would take for them to enrich their uranium to like weapons grade uranium. It's like 2 weeks. Now, the terrible Iran deal that Obama made their threshold capability have to be a year and not 2 weeks. And so for that whole time, after Obama's made that deal with Iran, their threshold capability then went to a year at a minimum, and meant that it was never imminent that they would have a nuke. And then Trump ripped up that deal and said it was a terrible deal, and then invaded because they're 2 weeks away from having a nuke. Because literally as soon as he ripped it up, they were like, okay, I guess we'll just get our shit ready to go again then.
Yeah, well, I mean, in fairness, Obama wrote it, so you can't just let
He is a Muslim.
bills that Obama wrote stand.
That is true. But I wanted to make that point because Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump also ripped up the Iran nuclear deal.
Mm-hmm. Almost as if he's trying to move some of this along.
Yeah. Almost as if, yes, that is exactly what he's doing. I mean, the Council for National Policy got behind Trump and has been behind Trump pretty heavily, which means that they approved him, which means that their goal has been to do this since 1980 or whenever they were created.
It's pretty subtle, but if you squint and look between the lines, you can almost see what appears to be an objective there, which isn't necessarily the American national interest or the world national interest for that
matter. It's in nobody's national, except maybe Israel. But then no, it's just creating a lot more mess.
And the Christians, man. This fucking temple, man.
But so that all aside, like how do I guess the question is, like, how do the people know that, how the supporters of this know that, like, this is the one, like, this is the one, this is, like they're like enabling this shit, funding a lot of it. And then, but how do they know when it's the right battle? And they're not just funding a constant series of skirmishes. And this is bolstered in the theology of the evangelical base. There's more to it than just like Trump definitely being like for reals blessed by Jesus. They'll point you to Ezekiel 38, which states that the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal in the land of Magog, located in the far north, will come with its Persian allies and attack a peaceful, unsuspecting Israel. They'll tell you that the Hebrew word Rosh translates to Russia, and then that Meshech means Moscow, and Tubal means Tobolsk. And they'll tell you that Persia, explicitly named as their ally, is Iran.
And it all just talking about Canaan 2,000 years ago. What did you say it was? Ezekiel 38?
It's, when they put it like that, it sounds somewhat convincing until you like realize it's all bullshit. Like historically and archaeologically, Meshech and Tubal were like ancient Anatolian kingdoms, the Phrygians and the Moskoi. And Magog was a term for the Scythian tribes, which are located, around Turkey. When they're talking about the north, they're talking about like modern Turkey. What's interesting about the Scythian tribes is, though, the Scythian tribes, we know them contemporarily, sort of, as the Ashkenazis, which converted to Judaism along the way and now are a significant amount of the population in Israel.
There you go. So that is very obviously what we're talking about. You want a quick Bible reading?
Go on.
The Lord's great victory over the nations. This is Ezekiel 38. The word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. Prophesy against him and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I am against you, Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with your whole army, your horses, your horsemen fully armed, and a great horde with large and small shields, all of them brandishing their swords. Persia, Cush, and Put will be with them, all with shields and helmets. Also Gomer with all its troops, and Beth Togarmah, and Beth Togarmah from the far north with all its troops, the many nations with you. Get ready, be prepared, you and all the hordes gathered about you, and take command of them. After many days you will be called to arms. In future years, you will invade a land that has recovered from war, whose people were gathered from many nations to the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. They had been brought out from the nations, and now all of them live in safety. You and all your troops and the many nations with you will go up, advancing like a storm. You will be like a cloud covering the land.
Sounds fun.
Great time.
So that like it, they might be the words, right? But the modern the translation of this being meaning Russia and Persia, or maybe Persia is mentioned in it, I don't remember, but like
It does say Persia.
it does.
Persia,
Yeah. So,
Kush, and Put. Persia, Kush, and Put.
so the
Kush is Afghanistan, right?
I think so, yes. So this being Russia and being a more contemporarily relevant geopolitical situation was hardwired into the American evangelical consciousness in 1909 through the footnotes of the Schofield Reference Bible. So this Bible is the absolute undisputed bedrock of modern American evangelism and Christian Zionism. It's the Bible that they all read from.
Okay.
So today, when the US dumps billions into Ukraine to bleed out Putin, or drops 900 strikes on Tehran in one day, the Christian base isn't thinking imperial geopolitics. They're thinking that they're fighting Gog and Magog. If you look at the original rabbinic texts and specifically the writings of this 19th century sage, the Malbim, whose work is foundational to the modern religious Zionist movement, it's not, the script is a bit flipped, and it's not a war against Gog and Magog for the Jews. It's the war of Gog and Magog. So he wrote that this isn't the world unifying to crush the Jews. It's a war of mutual annihilation between the two great global superpowers of the end times, Edom representing the Christian West and Ishmael representing the Islamic world. So they believe that they're going to sit back and watch the Christians and the Jews destroy each other in front of them, basically. They converge in the Middle East over Jerusalem. They turn their swords on each other. They exhaust their militaries. They bankrupt their treasuries. They burn their own empires to the ground. And Israel sits back and watches them do it. And then they're the last men standing. So while the Christian Zionists and the US military acting like the heroes of this story, riding in to save the day, in the true religious Zionist script, the Americans are the demolition crew, brought in to neutralize the Islamic world and fully expected to die in the process. So that's all well and good, I suppose. It is what it is. But it just begs questions to me, more questions. Most importantly, there's not a chance in hell these competing eschatologies evolved organically to intersect with this level of geopolitical utility. There's only two options here, as far as I'm concerned. One, this is God's plan. It all intersects because it was written by the divine, and we just haven't given him enough foreskins, and now we must perish. Or this was somehow coordinated.
Coordinated?
Which then begs the question, how old are these eschatologies anyway? Great question. If you listen to the evangelical preachers or any of the preachers, you'd think that this script was handed down on stone tablets thousands of years ago. The rapture and the Mahdi and the third temple are just laws of physics waiting to happen. But the truth is that these modern weaponized versions of the doomsday cults didn't come organically from ancient prophets wandering the desert. They were all manufactured fairly recently. I'll start with the Americans.
Okay.
Christian Zionism, evangelical, premillennial dispensationalism. It feels like the most American thing ever, right up there with drive-through banking and heart disease. But back in the 1830s, a fringe preacher named John Nelson Darby essentially invented the modern concept of the rapture. He decided that for Jesus to come back, the Jews had to be physically packed up and shipped back to Palestine. And that probably would have stayed like a weird fringe cult thing, except it caught the ear of Lord Shaftesbury, who saw a geopolitical life hack. His government was desperately trying to secure the overland trade route to India. They needed to keep the French and the Russians out of the Middle East. This is like right at the peak of the Great Game. Important context. Shaftesbury pitched his peers on a brilliant idea. You know, what if we sponsor a Jewish client state in Palestine? Secures our trade routes. We get to fulfill biblical prophecy. It's a win-win. So before
This
the
is
word...
an English guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before the word Zionism even existed, this specific British aristocracy had packaged up a geopolitical strategy, wrapped it in the Bible, and called it the Schofield Reference Bible. It was printed by Oxford Press, and it was shipped with Derby across the Atlantic to preach to the Americans. They planted an ideological virus, and the Americans have been enthusiastically funding it ever since. Which brings us to Zionism. God didn't draw the borders of modern Israel. Lord Alfred Milner and a war cabinet did in 1917. They issued the Balfour Declaration.
It's somewhere in here. They talk
No,
about going
because that's
from all
not
the way
modern
to,
Israel, is it?
Well, I mean, God did try.
Yeah.
So you're going to have it from here to here to here to here to here to here to here. Like, if that's to be believed.
And they didn't get that, did they? That's what they want.
No, they didn't. No.
So the modern borders were drawn up by Lord Alfred Milner and the British War Cabinet in 1917.
Okay, sorry. Yes, the aspirational,
Yeah,
theoretical,
Greater
boundaries.
Israel, the Promised Land, different thing. Yeah, but
Okay, sure. No, the modern borders were not drawn by God. That's correct. These are based on take what you can get, I believe. Is that what they're based on?
well, it wasn't because they had a religious awakening. It was because the Ottoman Empire was collapsing and they needed to secure the approach to the Suez Canal.
Take what you can get.
Having a loyal European-facing, heavily armed guard dog in the Middle East that owed its existence entirely to them was a great idea at the time. So the Mandate for Palestine was born. And they held the door open. They trained the early Jewish militias. They built the institutional skeleton of the state. They built the intelligence agencies. And then they quietly washed their hands of it when the whole thing became too much of a headache. So the foundation for the Christian Zionist base and the foundation of the Jewish Zionist base and the physical incubation of the Israeli state all share a very specific geopolitical origin in the depths, from the bowels of the British Empire, in the depths of the Great Game. But what about the Iranians? Surely the Ayatollahs and the 12 Shia death cult, purely Islamic or in origin, right? Well, no. So if you look at the fingerprints of that one too, for hundreds of years, 12 Shia Islam was pretty chill. We went over this last time, but they practiced political quietism. They were taught that Muslims should stay out of politics and wait patiently for the Mahdi to return at the end of time to fix the world. That was literally their doctrine, was to be quietists. So
Just clarify again, is that 12 like the number 12? 12 a Shia, or is that the word?
12er Shia.
12,
Shia,
okay.
it's Shia
So 12
Islam,
is the word.
and they're the 12ers, which means they believe that the 12th Mahdi will return.
Okay, so it is related to the number. 12 a Shia.
So if you wind back the clock to that same 19th century depths of the Great Game, you wind up at a guy named Syed Jamal al-Din al-Afghani.
Good job.
If you look him up on Wikipedia, you'll see that he is known as a great Muslim reformer. He's basically the godfather of modern political Islam. He went around convincing the Muslim world that they needed to stop waiting for God. They needed to rise up, assassinate their corrupt rulers, and overthrow Western imperialism. But the thing is, al-Afghani wasn't exactly the guy he presented himself to be, believe it or not. His name wasn't even al-Afghani, but he called himself al-Afghani so that the Sunni Arab world would listen to him and think he was from Afghanistan. But he was actually a Persian Shia. And he wasn't a pure desert holy man. He was literally the leader of the Star of the East Masonic Lodge in Egypt. The same Star of the East Masonic Lodge that was tied intimately to the United Grand Lodge of England. He used European Masonic secret society structures to organize his Islamic revolutionaries. And he was being funded and constantly hosted by, all that time, the City of London. They thought they could use his radical pan-Islamic movement to stir up revolts against the Russian Tsar in Central Asia and protect India. They thought they had a useful idiot, but instead, Afghani took the structural blueprint of a European revolution handed to him from London and injected it straight into the veins of the Shia Muslim world. He laid this ideological bedrock, which was left to fester for almost a century until it was picked up by a revolutionary Iraqi Iranian, later known as Ayatollah Khomeini. But Khomeini still needed like a catalyst. He needed the Iranian people to be angry enough to actually buy into this radical new theology. And it just so happens that in 1953, Iran had just democratically elected a prime minister who wanted to nationalize their oil. A certain British Iranian petroleum company, which would later drop the Iranian part of their name, lost its mind over that. Their intelligence service, MI6, tricked the CIA into getting involved, and the CIA helped them overthrow Iranian democracy and install the Shah.
Sneaky buggers.
The Shah then systematically crushed all his secular opposition until the only place that was safe for Iranians to organize any kind of opposition against the Shah was in mosques. The rest, as they say, is history. So the aristocracy of one specific rainy little island invented the theology that commands the West to unconditionally support Israel. The military carved out the borders of Israel. Their intelligence networks provided the blueprint that birthed radical Islam. And the corporate greed created the conditions necessary for radical Islam to take power. They built the arena, they armed the fighters, and they wrote the fucking script. By the end of World War II, Britain was bankrupt, but the aristocracy was still pretending that they were a global superpower. They still controlled the Suez Canal, which was the lifeline to whatever was left of like their global empire. But in 1956, the Egyptian president, Gamal Abdel Nasser, he nationalized the Suez Canal. The British and French elites completely lost the plot, and they hatched a secret, illegal invasion plan with Israel. The plan was that Israel would invade the Sinai, and Britain and the British and the French would swoop in as peacekeepers and seize the canal and depose Nasser. But they did this without telling Washington. Eisenhower was furious, not for any like humanitarian reasons, but because the US was locked in the Cold War, and he thought that any like old world European colonialism would drive the entire Arab and Third World into the arms of the Soviet Union. They wanted a new dollar-dominated global order, and the British and French, acting like 19th century colonial overlords, was ruining their brand. So he threatened to dump the United States' massive reserves of the British pound into the open market, and he was going to intentionally crash British currency, bankrupt the country overnight if they didn't withdraw from their plans. And the British folded like a cheap suit. The Prime Minister resigned in disgrace, and this was the exact moment in history where the baton of global empire was snatched from London and it was handed to Washington.
What year are we talking about here, sir?
1956. So
Okay.
The British Empire was officially executed by their primary ally. And look, now I can't sit here and tell you exactly what was said in the Guildhall in London after this, whole incident. This is done, and we don't have like a memo outlining a secret 70-year revenge plot. But if you look at how this specific empire operated whenever it was forced to pack up its bags and leave an area, you do see a pattern start to emerge. They did seem to have done a much grander version of what they always do and left their former territories in a mess. They left borders designed to fail, ideologies designed to clash. So when Eisenhower broke the British Empire in 1956, the Americans thought they were the new masters of the universe and that they just inherited the Middle East. It's hard not to think that the old imperial elite saw what was coming. They built the Christian Zionist eschatology. They'd incubated Israel. They'd provided the trauma and radicalized the Iranians. And then they just kind of handed the keys to Washington, kind of sunk back into the shadows. have fun with the new world, buddies. Maybe it was just imperial incompetence, but it does feel to me like they just kind of smiled and handed over the keys and walked away. Which leads you to a very uncomfortable realization, even though they aren't fighting in the war, whatever this apocalyptic war ends up being, it will be London's war, the war of the city of London. The city of London itself isn't immune to its own silly mythology. For over 500 years, the traditional mythical guardians of the City of London, the sovereign financial heart of the British Empire, the home of the legacy wealth and the Masonic lodges and the merchant guilds that for a long time around the world and built this entire machine, there's been two giant wooden effigies. And these effigies are paraded through the streets every year during the Lord Mayor's show. They live permanently in the Guildhall, which is the heart, is known as the heart of London. It's right in the center. It used to be it's 1,000 years old, the building. It used to be a palace. And then it became the sort of the Guildhall, the home of the merchant guilds. And we'll have a look at them and
go on. This happens every year.
Yeah.
I don't think I knew about this.
So we got Gog and Magog coming up here.
Oh, no.
They are mythical pagan giants.
Mythical pagan.
And London has become something of an important emblem for London. And the expression standing on the shoulders of giants reflects London's wealth and prestige based on the hard work done by Gog and Magog.
Oh my God. They've
been paraded in the show since Henry V. Remarkable. It's over 450 years ago. They were made by the worshipful company of basket makers. 8 months they took to build. They look fantastic. They pulled through the streets.
These things are like 10, 12 foot tall, being marched through the streets by people in red robes or red capes.
Yeah.
Gog and Magog, made 450 years ago by Henry V, did he say?
Mm-hmm.
Well, under the kingship of Henry V?
It's actually really interesting. It's got nothing to do with the Bible. It's
just coincidence.
It's the pagan mythology of London. Of the mythology of London that's been around since before it was taken over by the Romans is that it was the guarded by giants, and those giants were called Gog and Magog.
Are you telling me that's just coincidence?
Yeah.
That can't be a coincidence. That has to be a relation there somewhere.
It can't be a coincidence. But that's, the story is not what they tell the story and the mythology of them, and it's not like that. It's got no Christianity. It's always talked about as a pagan thing. But 500 years ago was like 1,500 years after the fucking Bible was written, and they were Christian at the time. So,
Well, so, I mean, that's entirely, they're just talking about the same. So does that mean that Psalm 38 is just talking about the same pagan thing that London is talking about?
Probably, yeah.
So what are they talking about then? What are these pagan... Did that even exist 2,000 years ago? Oh, my God. That's throwing a little spanner in the work.
I know, right?
I thought they were just taking it from the Bible.
How fucking interesting is that?
It's kind of like I have a love-hate relationship with that sort of thing happening, whereas like this could just be this, but no, it's actually something entirely different. And now you got to, oh, fuck.
Do you want to read the mythology? This is from the
Sure, yeah, okay, here we go.
History of this is the
Gog and
Lord
Magog.
Mayor of London website.
Towards the head of the procession, you may see two stern but benevolent wicker giants. They are Gog and Magog, the traditional guardians of the City of London, and they have been carried in the Lord Mayor's show since the reign of Henry V. the matter of Britain. Gog and Magog, or sometimes Gog, Magog, and Corinius, well, that's a pretty different thing, are descended from mythical pagan giants, and their origins lie in the medieval legends of early British kings. Okay, so those early British kings must have got it from Ezekiel, surely.
Well, it's part of
Right?
like the whole Arthurian thing, I'm pretty sure.
It's got to have come from Ezekiel, unless
It has to have,
Ezekiel got
though.
it from
Like, yeah.
some other. Unless they
this is
both
all-
came from, like, unless Ezekiel didn't invent it and they got it from the same place. Anyway,
Well, it could be
The
a
story
fact of
goes
like,
that-
Ezekiel incorporating,
existing stuff.
yeah, because it's not London's not the only place that has a statue or an effigy of someone mentioned as like one of like an offspring of Noah or whatever, when they explain like all his like descendants and whatever, and where they like, he's not the only place to have like an actual mythology around that said person in that city.
Yeah. Okay, so the story goes that Diocletian, the Roman emperor, had 33 wicked daughters. He managed to find 33 husbands to curb their unruly ways, but the daughters were not pleased, and under the leadership of their eldest sister Alba, they plotted to cut the throats of their husbands as they slept. Jesus Christ. For this crime, they were set adrift in a boat with half a year's rations, and after a long and dreadful journey, they arrived at a great island that came to be named Albion, after the eldest. Here they stayed, and with the assistance of demons, they populated the wild, windswept islands with a race of giants. Okay. Sometime later, Brutus, the great-grandson of Aeneas, fled the fall of Troy, and by way of various scrapes arrived at the same islands. He too named them for himself, so we also know them as Britain. Is Britain named after Brutus, is it?
Must be.
With him, he brought his most able warrior and champion, Corinius, who faced the leader of the giant brood in single combat and eventually hurled him from a high rock to his death. The name of the giant was Gog Magog, and the rock from which he was thrown became known as Langnagog, or the Giant's Leap. As a reward, Corinius was given the western part of the island, which came to be called Cornwall, after him. Brutus travelled to the east and founded the city of New Troy, which we know as London. We keep going? I think we got the idea.
Maybe just read that Giants bit.
Okay, just to catch up, the full story can be found in Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century Historia Regum Britanniae, a largely fanciful, but hugely influential. God, that's the way it goes, isn't it? Largely fanciful, but hugely influential. History that connects Celtic royalty to the heroic world of the Greek myth by way of the old Welsh legend of King Arthur. The alert reader will have noticed that the fall of Troy was about 2,300 years before the reign of Diocletian, and that the name Gog Magog is a mangled borrowing from the Old Testament, but these histories were accepted as fact for centuries and would have real importance to the medieval participants in the mayor's procession. Giants. It is common enough for people to regard the original inhabitants of their lands as giants. The memory of early struggles for land or survival is preserved in mythology, and heroes become giants in the popular mind. They probably were large and powerful men, and their physical strength and stature became exaggerated as their deeds passed into legend. Our pagan giants were not ugly or huge. They are the elaborated folk memory of great men inhabiting a lost age of might and simplicity.
They say that, but like we know now that there was other species of human around that were bigger.
Neanderthals?
The Denisovans. Neanderthals were shorter, but Denisovans were bigger.
They were a ways back, though, weren't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't know.
Are they
really.
preserved through the collective memory?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're talking like mythology, there would have been a time as the founding time, when people first went into lands outside of Africa, the inhabitants would have been giants. Well, not all of them. Neanderthals were they would have been dwarfs, but and the Denisovans were certainly larger. And so that's the end of that chapter.
Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a cocktail sort of everything, doesn't it? They sort of take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it all blends together, and they get a little bit of Gog Magog, these giants. I mean, there's stories because the Bible, they were reading the Bible, right? Like that was a pretty.
They would have to have been the stories would have had to have been known.
And so you've got stories of the Nephilim in there and all this other stuff, and there's
Which I think
I had no idea that was
all that stuff, like the Nephilim and the stories of giants. I mean, I'm sure that comes from coming across Denisovans when they first got to these lands that humans went on to inhabit. I mean, it has to come from that, because that's what would have happened.
I think you got a case. I think you can make a case for that, certainly.
They weren't exaggerated, towering figures, but they were definitely noticeably larger.
Yeah.
If you listen to, if anyone goes back and listens to the third part of the Mystery Hominins of Australia series we did,
yes,
I actually did the math of what percentage larger the molars of Denisovans are compared to Homo sapiens, and I translated it to what that would translate to in height based on what we know it translates to in other primates.
There's that paleontology, see? Taking a tooth.
So I thought I'd include here. I went and checked all the other Christian offshoot eschatologies, to see how they intersect. I was mostly concerned with Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses. But they're both kind of nonsensical. But there is one Christian sect
that's racist. You can't say that. That's racist.
Is that racist? There is one Christian sect which, gets this. Like they fucking get it, and it's in their whole beliefs. So while all this was playing out, like back in the early last century, there was another strain of Christianity with its finger on the pulse. There's this group that actually recognized the City of London's trap almost a century ago, mostly while kicking back with a spliff in the mountains of the Caribbean. When the average person hears Rastafari, they think of Bob Marley, weed, maybe college kids with trust funds, like some kind of counterculture aesthetic. But it's not. It's a militant, anti-imperialist eschatology offshoot of Abrahamic theology. And so I thought it might be fun, if we're going to examine the blueprints of the apocalypse and all the other eschatologies, we might as well have a look at theirs, because when you map out their theology, they not only get it, but they also completely opt out of it.
Go on, man.
So let's break down the rasters in the way that we did the others. So first, the Messiah. To the Christian Zionists, Jesus is coming back. To the Twelvers, the Mahdi is coming back with Jesus. To the Jews, the Messiah is on its way. To the Rastafari, the Messiah already returned. His name was Ras Tafari. He was crowned in 1930 as Haile Selassie I, the Emperor of Ethiopia, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, and a direct descendant of King Solomon. So the Rastas don't need Jesus to fall from the sky and crown himself king. Their savior already came and already got his crown. The location. So whilst these other sects are fixated on a 37-acre slab of rock in Jerusalem, the Rastas look at the Middle East and see a dead end. To them, the true Zion isn't Israel. Zion is Africa, specifically Ethiopia. Which brings us to their villain. In the Rasta eschatology, the ultimate oppressive force in the world is a system called Babylon. And Babylon isn't a single country. Babylon is the entire apparatus of Western imperialism, capitalism, and institutionalized slavery that keeps humanity spiritually and physically chained. The Babylon itself isn't a specific place or country, it's a concept. It's the concept of Western imperialism and the global financial system. But it has a defined and stated figurehead of that system. The British Empire, the Crown, and the Pope.
Right. I mean, we do hear a lot of this quite explicitly in Bob Marley's songs, don't we?
Yeah.
Really?
He's essentially like the prophet, you know, he's not the Messiah, but he's definitely the prophet. Before Israel was even a country, before anyone had the faintest idea that the British engineered political Zionism, and long before the City of London handed the kamikaze eschatology to Washington, the Rastafarians were sitting in a British colony, pointing at London and calling it the Whore of Babylon. So do they have an eschatological trigger like the rest of them? And they do. Their eschatology is built on a concept called the fall of Babylon and the repatriation. They believe that Babylon is fundamentally corrupt and cannot be saved. Babylon will inevitably destroy itself. The oppressor's system is inherently unsustainable. The empires of the West and the East will turn on each other out of greed and arrogance, and their machines of war will grind them to dust. And so seeing we're giving them the same treatment as the others, where did Rastafarianism actually come from? Well, their first prophet came in the 1920s, a Jamaican political activist named Marcus Garvey, or Garvey, I don't know, was pushing a big like Pan-African movement in the Caribbean. And he was essentially telling the black diaspora that the white European systems will never accept you. We need to build our own economy and look back to Africa. He made a prophecy. He said, "Look to Africa when a black king shall be crowned, for the day of deliverance is at hand." He's essentially the John the Baptist of the Rasta movement. But the trigger came in 1930 when a man named Rastafari Makonnen was crowned Emperor of Ethiopia. He took the title the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. And to the underclass living in Jamaica under British colonial rule, this was the fulfillment of the prophecy. But you need someone to turn an event into a theology, and that guy was a guy called Leonard Percival Howe. He's considered the first Rasta. He was a Jamaican who traveled the world, observed the horrors of Western imperialism, and returned to Jamaica in 1932, started preaching that Haile Selassie was the returned Messiah, and that the black diaspora owed absolutely no allegiance to the King of England. And he wrote the foundational text in 1935, a pamphlet called The Promise Key, and he explicitly laid out that the Pope and the British Crown were the agents of Babylon. But the British colonial authorities didn't look at Howe as a quirky religious figure. They looked at him as a threat, and they arrested him, charged him with sedition, and threw him in prison. When he got out, he bought a piece of land in the mountains of Jamaica in 1940 and created a sovereign, self-sustaining commune called Pinnacle. This was the first Rasta community. They grew their own food, they lived outside of the British economy, and they cultivated massive amounts of weed to sell and smoke as a spiritual sacrament. But naturally, the colonial police hated Pinnacle, and they raided it repeatedly and finally destroyed it. In 1954, which forced the Rastas to scatter into the ghettos of Kingston, where the theology merged with the music scene and eventually birthed Bob Marley. So rather than the Schofield Bible's interpretation of the War of Gog and Magog aren't Russia and Iran. They just represent the corrupt warmongering superpowers of Babylon. The empire is destined to lock horns in the final destructive struggle for world domination. So to the Rastas, the War of Gog and Magog is just Babylon eating itself. And they choose to not partake in that and kick back in the mountains and mind their own business. And as Australians, also a former British...
not a bad little like strategy they got there.
That's a great strategy.
Kick back in the mountains and mind their own business. That sounds... Credit to them. There we go.
Yeah. As Australians, also a former British colony, brought over in chains, dumped in this strange land and made to do the work while the former East Indiamen extract our wealth and ship it back to London. I think we could all learn something from the Rusters. You know, we got something good going on here. This like big melting pot of people on all sides of this shit. It would serve us well if we could all just kick back, smoke a spliff, and let Babylon tear itself down.
Right, here.
And who knows, Daniel, maybe we'll realize that Zion was right here the entire time.
I'm pretty sure that's what Jesus was trying to tell us.
That is literally what Jesus was trying to say. I'm pretty sure.
This is, you don't need to be a cryptologist to get this out of the point. Like,
No.
yes, very obviously. You don't even need the Bible. Just think about it.
Exactly. And so that's the end of that chapter. The British set up this whole fucking thing in the midst of the Great Game, right as it was all shaping up for the British and all their. I mean, because none of this is done for long-term plans. I mean, maybe by the Freemasons, probably, but like, you know, it all had short-term political goals, and once those political goals were met, it was just kind of like, I don't know, maybe they had a plan of where to go with it. Well, I think they did, but that's for next episode. But they went under, and they just kind of handed over the baton to Washington and just kind of snuck off into the shadows.
That's the other thing that annoys me about all these the conspiracists who talk about, you know, these plans that are hatched to like destroy Western civilization, all that. It's like they're not operating on that timescale. Like this doesn't go back hundreds of years. It's just people just doing shit in the moment that just collectively, you know, accumulate on each other, as you just said. It's very frustrating. Like, oh yeah, they have this grand plan to like, you know, eradicate the white race or whatever. It's like, why? For what? What do you? A, why, and B, how, and C, like, what are they?
Who?
What are you talking about?
Who? Because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure all the people doing the dodgy shit are white.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Calgary, I think is what they say, or Calgary or something. You know that? Have you heard of the Calgary plan? That's white replacement. It's this this guy. He was like some European, I don't know, philosopher or politician.
Rene Guénon?
I don't know, maybe.
But
he basically like he just looked at he did the maths and he looked at it and goes, we're probably not going to have white people forever. Like,
yeah, it's like a French.
We're going to
guy.
be interbreeding.
I'm pretty sure
we're
it
going to
was
be interbreeding.
Rene Guénon. Yeah,
there's going to be interbreeding, and so that's going to result in, you know, a general homogenization of the races. That's just my idea. That's what I reckon might happen. And people are like, oh, so he was a plan. They were always going to fucking do it. No, he just looked at it and he just recognized that you're going to find some English dudes who like some cute kind of Chinese chicks.
He's just the first like anti-immigration guy, you know. Or not even anti-immigration.
Yeah, I don't think he saw it as a negative thing. He's just like, that's just what's going to happen. We're going to have, you know, Swedes and Nepalese and Thais and Germans and all that sort of stuff.
So I'm going to...
it's inevitable. Anyway.
I'm going to pay homage to the Rusters.
Go on there.
And kick back in my mountain. So the question, I guess, like from here, which we will address next time, is will America go head into an apocalyptic battle thinking it's the end of days? Or does America have a trump card? And that pun is absolutely intended.
Yeah. So what do you mean by America? You mean the whole population of the country, or do you mean the administration? Do you mean military?
I guess.
Do you mean what? The military? Will they attempt to do this? Quite possibly, yeah. Whoever has Trump's ear clearly has Trump's ear. Like, they've obviously got him to the extent where he's willing to do this. It doesn't appear to be related to any constructive goals of either foreign policy or American policy or anything like that. The only way that it makes sense is from a destructive point of view, where they are clearly trying to destroy the international order, that sort of thing.
This is how this is how I think it's happened. Like, this is how I think the support for this has happened. I think Netanyahu just had to say to Trump, I mean, obviously, you know, you've got the whole, he's prepared to hear this because the Council for National Policy and, you know, moving the embassy to Jerusalem and, you know, ripping up the fucking Iran nuclear deal for some fucking reason. Like, you know, he's obviously expecting this, but I think what getting, you know, if he's like got to a point where he's thinking twice about it, all Netanyahu has to say to him is like, will you be our new Cyrus the Great?
Yeah.
You know?
As in play to his ego.
Well, as in like, you know, you do this for the Jews and we're going to love you forever, you know, just like Cyrus did. Just as like Cyrus saved the Jews, you'll be the new one. We'll have you on our coins and shit. You know?
So yes, play to his ego.
Yeah. Like that's all he has to say.
This.
And any doubts that Trump has, any second guessing would just be completely out the window. Did you see how the director of counterintelligence resigned yesterday?
No.
Director of counterintelligence, Trump appointed, massive MAGA guy. I'm pretty sure like has actually been like an Iran hawk in his past. He resigned yesterday and he made a statement saying like there's no justification for attacking Iran. They did not pose an imminent threat to anyone and I can't be a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't a good call to do this. It's kind of surprising.
Dumb as fuck.
It's really dumb as fuck. I haven't like been monitoring it too closely. I've still had my head in the Epstein stuff, to be honest, because I figure there's enough eyes on this at the moment, and it's all moving so quickly, and I couldn't even I wouldn't. It doesn't matter, really. I mean, obviously it matters, but you know, my monitoring of it doesn't make any difference. So yeah, I've still been trying to you know, just wrangle this whole Epstein story. But from what I've seen, this move doesn't have the support. Most importantly, it doesn't have the support of Bannon, who, you know, obviously we've talked a lot about. Yeah, and that's the thing. But like if you watch the War Room, it's very clearly Bannon trying to talk to Trump, saying, this is really dumb. You need to give us a very good reason for this. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Which then raises the question, what happens from here?
Well, he started it. Like you can't just finish it. Like you can't, the war only starts. No one says when it finishes.
Sure, but if it becomes undeniably apparent that Trump does not have the mental faculties to be able to lead the country, the question is, well, I guess what I'm asking is there anyone in the military who would then consider taking action to do something? And like it's remarkable that is the kind of uncharted territory that we're in. You know what I mean? But that's not something which I think is off the table. Where at the moment they're going to say, okay, we're going to yoink this guy, and then you can have your elections and do whatever you want, but we can't have this guy anymore, and we don't have the mechanisms. We had the Constitution, and that was nice, but it's not working here. So we need to take extra constitutional action. Or they just do it by the 25th Amendment or something. I don't know, but it's. I mean,
it's not even constitutional from the start. So
he didn't. Well, exactly. And so, at what point does the chairman of the Joint Chiefs or whatever say, okay, well, Congress has clearly failed in their duty, so we're going to arrest this guy, Trump.
When Trump came in, it's worth mentioning. I mean, I haven't heard anyone, mention it in hindsight, but I do remember when Trump was elected and appointing his cabinet, it was like, well, these guys are all Iran hawks
and loyalists.
Loyalists,
okay,
but specifically also loyalists that have been gunning for Iran for their whole political careers.
Well, yeah, if you got that, obviously, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm just saying theoretically, if it were to happen, what is, because he can't just keep on doing this.
Well, worryingly is the Gulf states. I think today, or maybe yesterday, come out and they've just said you destroy Iran, Trump, because Iran's been hitting them. Oh, I thought they were going to They were going to be like, well, you can't do this, but they've completely just been like, all right, no, we're all in for this. Let's do it. It's not good. It's not good. But so there's more to this.
Okay.
There's more to this, and that suggests to me that either the Council for National Policy or the Council of Foreign Relations, where that came from. You know, maybe some kind of group that that is both you know, more powerful than the government in terms of like being able to you know, commission black budget research projects and stuff like that. Has been aware of, you know, very keenly aware of these eschatologies for a long time, and whatever they've been working on, I think, is the trump card of America, and we'll you know, we'll explore that, because, like I said, there's more there's more things that were seeded at this time, and there's more real strange shit that's been happening simultaneous to this invasion and the lead up to the invasion as well, that probably should have some attention on it, because it has zero. It's kind of, you know, it all kind of continues to point in one direction.
Well, that's what we're here for. Give you the stuff that other people aren't.
Yeah. Well, it's like about this, you know, it's too, this is, the more when I've been putting this together, the more I get into it, it's like the Epstein file thing was clearly just to like get the conspiracy theorists focused on one thing. I feel like that also is why it seems like they've deliberately picked a name that starts with the same initials as Epstein files.
Yeah,
because it's just like a hint that's like, oh, there's definitely something. It's like, I think that there's definitely something in the files they haven't released, but probably relating to this. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything. All I know is like what what it looks like, you know?
Yeah. That's kind of the state of it at the moment, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
We don't really know. Trying to make sense of the actions of a madman.
Yeah. Well,
that was still
maybe he's the Messiah.
But it was still very informative to get that. I like the Rasta stuff. That's good.
I want to dig more into also the whole like lost true tribe of Judah or whatever it was that they claim to be. Is that like an Ethiopian thing? You ever heard anything about that?
I know that some of the early Christians did go into Africa. So the Ethiopian Bible is a big part of it.
Yeah, it's like the old, isn't it like the old?
It's one of the oldest,
like the most well preserved or something. It's got like books in it that aren't in the other one.
A few of the Gnostics, yeah.
Also rumored to be where the Ark of the Covenant ended up.
Correct. Yeah. So this isn't really surprising to hear that they would have this whole big strain. So I'd imagine, when they talk about the lost tribe of Judah, I'm sure that someone from ancient Israel went for a big walk back then and settled in Ethiopia. Thought, this will do, and that could totally have happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they definitely went for big walks. So,
indeed.
Talk of a political dirt unit.